Noam Chomsky put an article in alternet.org because the mainstream media does not want Noam Chomsky speaking on any big forums. Hats off to Netflix for putting his documentary, Requiem for the American Dream, on there. So Chomsky writes, why the rest of the world no longer wants to be like the United States. Many countries in the world see the U.S. as a single greatest external threat to their societies. He wrote this November 6th, 2013, during Obama's presidency that Chomsky was talking about this. It's amazing to listen to Noam Chomsky, to read his words and to listen to him speak, especially now. You know, he's probably like in his 80s now, and he speaks in this very nice, calm voice. And, well, you know, we're a complete kleptocracy, and it's amazing. I mean, he's amazing to read, and the fact that he's not on mainstream media is all the more reason to read and support him. But I'm going to read some of this stuff from 2013 and tell me if it's still accurate. Again, from November 5th, 2013, during the latest episode of the Washington farce that has astonished a bemused world, which could be anything that Trump is doing on a daily basis, a Chinese commentator wrote that if the United States cannot be a responsible member of the world system, perhaps the world should become de-Americanized and separate itself from the rogue state that is reigning military power but is losing credibility in other domains. The Washington debacle's immediate source was the sharp shift to the right among the political class. In the past, the U.S. has sometimes been described sardonically, but not inaccurately, as a one-party state, the business party, with two factions called Democrats and Republicans. That is no longer true. The U.S. is still a one-party state, the business party, but it only has one faction, moderate Republicans, now called Democrats. This is so funny. It's so true. I mean, Saturday Night Live even made the joke during the campaign when they would always do those spoofs of the debates, right? And I'm blanking on the comedian that played Hillary. God, she's hilarious. She was funny in Ghostbusters. I'm blanking on her name, but Alec Baldwin was playing Trump. And in one of the Saturday Night Live debates, she said, America needs to make a choice between the Republican and Donald Trump. And SNL was saying, yeah, Hillary's a Republican. The Democratic Party they're just pro-choice Republicans. That's all they are. It's amazing. There is still a Republican organization, but it long ago abandoned any pretense of being normal parliamentary party. Conservative commentator Norman Ornstein of the American Enterprise Institute describes today's Republicans as a radical insurgency, ideologically extreme, scornful of facts and compromise, dismissive of the legitimacy of its political opposition, a serious danger to the society. The party is in lockstep service to the very rich and the corporate sector. Since votes cannot be obtained on that platform, the party has been compelled to mobilize sectors of the society that are extremist by world standards. 2013, he said this. Crazy is the new norm among Tea Party members and a host of other beyond the mainstream. Yeah. The Republican establishment and its business sponsors had expected to use them as a battering ram in the neoliberal assault against the population, to privatize, to deregulate, and to limit government while retaining those parts that serve wealth and power like the military. The Republican establishment has had some success, but now finds that it can no longer control its base, much to its dismay. The impact on American society thus becomes even more severe. A case in point, the virulent reaction against the Affordable Care Act and the near shutdown of the government. That's what he was talking about. But sadly, what Noam is referring to is 2013 of it's out of control. That's what got them back the White House, was Trump. Trump blew up the Republican Party and went after its power elite like Jeb Bush and got elected on this crazy base. And you saw, it's interesting, you go back and read this article from 2013 and you saw a lot of like they're not moderate Republicans, but moderate compared to this crazy base, or just not extremist Republicans, were bailing on Trump because they thought, oh man, he's out of control. He's going to this crazy base. Trump was losing and getting crushed in the polls the whole summer, right? And it was getting worse and worse and worse. And everyone's like, all right, Trump's done. He's going to get worked. It's over. And then you had people like former Secretary of Defense Gates was like, oh boy, if Trump gets elected, I'm emigrating to Canada. You had Mitt Romney going, oh boy, I don't like this guy at all. And then when he won, they're like, hey, maybe we can do some business, you know, because they thought he was just going to just get crushed and destroy the Republican Party. And now they're all on board. And now they're, you know, many of them. Some are still like, no, but they're just like hedging their bets if he gets ousted in 2020 or there's a Democratic overtake in 2018. The Chinese commentator's observation is not entirely novel. In 1999, political analyst Samuel B. Huntington warned that for much of the world, the U.S. is becoming a rogue superpower, seen as the single greatest external threat to their societies. We're seeing it with such clarity now that Trump's in there. As I've said, Trump is just the ugliest version. As Hedges said, he's the symptom, not the disease, but the symptom is really looking ugly now. But can you blame, now it's, since he's so nuts, can you blame the rest of the world for being terrified? If I lived in any other country, if I was a citizen of any other country, I'd be like, holy shit, this country with this military and this nuclear arsenal that can wipe the whole, can ruin, can turn the entire planet into a ball of fire 10 times over, is out of control. They're a rogue state. America is just bombing and regime change. We're just completely out of control. Noam Chomsky was calling this in 2013. Hedges talked about it in his book in 2010. People have been talking about this for a while. In the latest issue of Foreign Affairs, of course, in 2013, the leading establishment journal David K. reviews one aspect of Washington's departure from the world: rejection of multilateral treaties as if it were sport. Trump's talking about that. He just got back from Europe and was like, I don't know about NATO, you know? So much so that now the German Chancellor Merkel is like, maybe we do need to pay our own way, because Trump was like, well, NATO needs to pay its own way. We're tired of paying our own way. Like, we're tired of paying for everything, even though you just want to increase the military budget. Your new budget is cutting social programs and the arts and Planned Parenthood and all this stuff. The environment, you're cutting all that stuff, but we can't afford to support NATO. NATO was created after World War II for a reason. Others are dismissed by inaction, including such subjects as labor, economic and cultural rights, endangered species, pollution, armed conflict, peacekeeping, nuclear weapons, the law of the sea, and discrimination against women. Right, we were supposed to be the big moral, we're the moral judge of the world because we're the America that's doing the good thing. And people just don't want to admit. You know, I tweeted after that awful thing that happened in Manchester, which was awful, but it's just as awful as us killing civilians from drone strikes in the Middle East. And a guy was like arguing me online, going, "Oh man, they're a crazy ideology and all." It's not like he's just, people don't want to believe. They just can't, and it's a tough pill to swallow for some people. It was kind of tough for me to swallow for a while, that America isn't as great. It's not this great country. That's what we've been fed, but that's what governments do. It's like when I was on Aggressive Progressive and we were talking to those two guys in the cave. The Jewish guy and the Palestinian guy who were doing that coalition, and I asked the Jewish guy who was from Canada, I said, what do you think, you know, Israelis, he's like, Israelis are shielded from their government about the awful stuff that's going on in the occupied zone, and to the Palestinians, they're just shielded from it. They're not even aware of what's happening. They're not even showed it. They're just told the Palestinians are all terrorists and they made this happen. They brought this on themselves. We've been told that. We're the force for good. Navy ads, any sporting event, especially football. You watch football, there's a Navy, a global force for good, you know, and it's like, America's coming in to help. And it's just not true, and it hasn't been true for a while, and we're all having to wake up to that fact. This written by Noam Chomsky in 2013. I'll read his last paragraph. Becoming a treaty-worthy nation thus conferred multiple advantages: foreign recognition, and the freedom to act at home without interference. Hegemonic power offers the opportunity to become a rogue state, freely defying international law and norms, while facing increasing resistance abroad and contributing to its own decline through self-inflicted wounds. I don't know how America's going to last if we keep doing this. I really don't. But Keep reading people like Noam Chomsky and Chris Hedges. If there's anybody else like that, I'd love to know. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And support places like Alternet. There's an article in here, wake up, liberals, there will be no 2018 blue wave, no Democratic majority, and no impeachment. That's an article we should read. And support the Patreon, guys. My Patreon is it's kind of fluttering. We need some help. I want to start recording a podcast. My goal with the podcast is to maybe even start recording some interviews, since that's harder to do with my camera setup here. But I can just get a recording device and talk to some people and record talk about some different stories on the podcast and release that, obviously, like in iTunes and whatnot. So there's multiple ways for you guys to listen and support the show and have different content on the video and different content on the audio. So thanks for supporting the show.